Morning again. And so welcome to the first day, week one of our journey through um, the theme of grace, living with grace or flowing with grace. And the first aspect that we're looking at and exploring is breath. So over the course of this next week, we will be exploring little aspects of breath and connecting it to how we can bring that to being in a state of grace. And then also how we can bring that onto our mat. This morning, we worked on a four-part breath. And four-part breath is the fundamental back of any kind of a regular breath practice. So whether you're just doing a pranayama breath practice or bringing your breath into your yoga practice, as the four-part breath is the basis of what Ujjayi breath is. So I'll get into that in a second. But first of all, making that connection as to how breath is an element when we're looking at exploring grace. And as you can see, Minnie is wandering around, so she may float in and out of the video. She gets too lonely if I leave her by herself. So anyway, breath. How is breath an aspect of being in a state of grace? So being in a state of grace, one of the fundamental things to look at is that in order for us to experience a state of grace, as I said in my video from yesterday, we need to get rid of what doesn't serve us anymore, right? If we are cluttered with just, things within our body, if we're cluttered with stuff all around us, and we don't need it, then that is taking up the space or the room for us to be able to grow into. So if we're looking at breath in particular, if we look at those four parts of the breath that we examined this morning in the four-part breath practice, we have an inhale, a pause, an exhale, and a pause. And I mean, we can guess right away, with an exhale, definitely we know we're getting rid of our breath. But let's take that a little bit deeper and understand more significantly each of those parts of breath so we can see how closely tied breath is to living in a state of grace or flowing in a state of grace. So first we have our inhale. And our inhale is fundamental because our inhale, we breathe in breath. And when we do that, we expand out our lungs. In order to expand out our lungs, we need to open up our rib cage. For our rib cage to open, we need to have nice open shoulders. And as I talked about this morning in the breath practice, we need to have our hips released as well. So if we sit with our knees up, then our hips are pulling in. That's going to curl the spine and compress everything. So our shoulders will roll in and will compress the lungs. But with our knees flowing downward away from our hips open, our shoulders open, and we give the opportunity for our body to take a maximum or an optimal inhale, the biggest inhale we can have. So our inhale expands and increases our lung space. That's fundamentally important because that keeps our lungs healthy. Our lungs are elastic. So if we just let them sit in the same position without really opening and closing them, then we're not really exercising our lungs. But if we're practicing expanding our lungs all of the time, the more we practice that, the bigger and bigger our lungs can expand open. The healthier and stronger our lungs are. The healthier and stronger we are as people. So inhale is that expansion, trying to get in as much breath as we can. So bringing our body in a position that will allow us to have the most optimal inhale. Again, shoulders open, hips open, allow for the rib cage to expand wide and give room for the lungs to open up into. Then there is a suspension between the breath, or a retention of breath. This is the pause between the inhale and the exhale. This pause is fundamental because now we've inhaled and we've expanded our lung capacity. By holding that breath there, we're pushing our lungs open and putting it into a place where they remember, hey, this is a nice big space. So that the next time we come into an optimal breath, they're like, oh yeah, remember how big they got? Let's try and get our lungs there again, or let's try to even get them bigger. So that breath that we have, that pause in our breath that we have between the inhale and the exhale helps our lungs stay open so that our lungs remember how open they can be. Then we have our exhale. Our exhale is easy. We're getting rid of stuff, right? We're getting rid of that breath. But fundamentally, a little bit more happens than that. What a lot of people don't realize is that this is how we get rid of the toxins in our body. This is how we flush out our lymphatic system. Everybody thinks that, when I go to the bathroom, that's how I get rid of everything. Oh, I peed a whole bunch today, so I got rid of a whole bunch. In fact, going to the bathroom only gets rid of about 3% of the toxins in your body. 2%, number one, 1%, number two. That's 3% altogether. So how do we get rid of the 97% of the rest of the toxins that have accumulated in our lymphatic system? This is done by our exhales. Our exhales are so fundamentally important to our health. Our lymphatic system drains and pools all the way into the lymph nodes that we primarily have on the left side of our chest, but also on the right side. But the majority of the lymph nodes are all found on the left side and some on the right. So they pool, all of the lymphatic fluid pools to these lymph nodes and they drain into the lungs so that when we exhale, we're getting rid of toxins. So the more we can exhale, the more toxins we're getting rid of. So the bigger we inhale, the bigger we can exhale, right? So if you go back to that 4-part breath that we practiced this morning, we want to set up a breath where our inhale and our exhale match each other for various reasons. But one fundamental reason is we want to take out the amount of breath we've put in. So our exhales get rid of the toxins. It literally gets rid of the shit we have built up. This is on a physical, a mental, and a metaphysical level. We're clearing it all out. And then there is another pause, a suspension of breath again, between the exhale and your next inhale. This is like a vacuum of space. When you get rid of everything in your exhale, then we're just empty. There's emptiness there. In the Western world, emptiness sometimes has a negative connotation. Emptiness meaning like a lack of something. But it's actually a really good thing. Instead of emptiness as being a negative thing, you should look at it as a positive thing. This is space that you have created to now grow into the newness, whatever the new possibilities are. This openness, this space is where grace lies. This space allows us to explore something new, to learn something about ourselves. And so each part of the breath is fundamental. We inhale, we expand things out. We pause, we hold that expansion, teaching our lungs to be able to go to that place. We exhale, we get rid of all of the stuff our body no longer needs. Mind, body, spirit, no longer needs. And then we pause there again in that suspended space until our body tells us we need to inhale again. And because we've gotten rid of stuff, we have so much more space to open up into. So that next inhale is bigger. So each part of our breath is fundamental. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. And that's going to help us move into being our authentic self, to flowing in a state of grace. So how do we bring this into our practice? Well, breath is yoga. You can't do an asana practice without breath. You begin in a 4-part breath and then you move into, or you transition to the Ujjayi breath, which is the exact same breath, but it's regulated. And later on in the week, we will be exploring the Ujjayi breath. So what I invite you to do in your practice is, when you have moments of pause, really focus in on that breath. So first and foremost, you want to establish that strong breath that you can maintain throughout. So as talked about in the video this morning, we practiced extending or lengthening that inhale and exhale out. You want to pick a length of breath that you know you can maintain throughout an entire yoga practice. If you're like, oh, I can start off on 7 or 8 inhale and a 7 or 8 exhale, and then you get, 10 minutes into the practice and you're out of breath, well, that wasn't really a breath that you can maintain. So it's better to step it down and begin at a breath count of 3 and be like, oh, okay, that was really comfortable. Maybe I'm going to try a 4. 4 was pushing it a little bit too far, so I'm going to go back to a 3, or, 4 was perfect. So you need to find that number that works best for you, that you know you can maintain throughout an entire practice. Remembering, if you lose that breath at any point during the practice, it's so fundamental that you take a posture that you can come back into the breath. This is often why teachers invite you to take a child's pose. Because in that child's pose, you can get back into that rhythm of the 4-part breath and bring it back into an Ujjayi breath until you're able to rejoin the practice with everyone else. I invite you on your mat space, once you've established that magic number and you've got that strong breath happening, the moments that you pause, for an example, mountain pose, downward dog, take those moments to really be in the breath. Maybe even soften your gaze and just breathe and feel the power and the life that comes with the breath. Feel strong and dynamic as you take every inhale. And as you're hanging in that suspension of space between your exhale and your next inhale, enjoy that vastness that's there for you to explore. Hopefully, you find something that you're able to bring and allow it to resonate with you. At the very least, establishing that strong breath practice. I look forward to seeing you in the studio on your mat, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning with our next breath practice. Have a fantastic day.